Hope and Healing Canada is Tracey-Mae's ongoing series of site-specific installations at residential school historical sites, cultural centers, museums, art galleries, and other public spaces. Created with crochet and knit pieces made with red yarn, the goal of these installations is to broach the subject of decolonization. Welcome, Tracey-Mae. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. I will now turn it over to you.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for coming tonight. I really appreciate it. And I especially appreciate Carly and Matthew and all the help that they've given me over the last little bit, installing and just coordinating all of this. It's been wonderful, and I really appreciate their help. And thank you everyone for coming today. And as Carly said, please feel free to ask questions anytime during the presentation, and we'll collect those and talk about them at the end. So thank you for coming to this art talk. Sorry, stumbling over my words a little bit. Of Hope and Healing Canada, which is at the Preston Idea Exchange section of the Cambridge Art Gallery. And so we're going to start here. So I began this project in the spring last year. I think, like everyone else, I was feeling lots of different emotions and wasn't really sure what to do with myself, especially when we were sort of stuck at home and not sure what to do next and what was going to be happening next. So I was trying to figure out how to address the things that were happening around me. So just to give this body of work context, these are some of the feelings that I was having, and I'm sure that you were feeling a lot of them as well. Certainly, I was feeling hopeless, and it was because of everything that was happening in the world. But specifically, it was the announcing of the 215 graves found at Kamloops. And, that's made everyone feel, so a whole myriad of emotions, including depression and anger and sadness and confusion and fear. The fear we were having, this in and out of COVID lockdowns and not lockdown. It was horrible for everyone. And then this happened as well. The looking a myopic look of the Canadian Indian residential school system and how that affected generations of First Nations people in Canada and the United States. So that's where I was coming from when I was thinking about what to do next in my art practice. So I decided I was going to address decolonization and then through that reconciliation. So I want to learn how to talk to people about these kinds of issues, but I don't know how to start the conversation. So this was a good way to do it. I wanted to be able to go into places, art galleries, museums, other public places, and look at decolonization. And even just having an Indigenous, Métis, or Inuit artist in a space that's traditionally colonial is an act of decolonization. So I don't know what that process looks like in the greater world. I just know what it looks like in the small amount that I can affect change. And I want to look at the power dynamics in our civilization as well. Look at how, there's a clear difference in socioeconomic balances in Canada. And I'm often asked why I use red. Yellow is my favorite color, so I always tease that it would be lovely to have been able to use yellow, but it wasn't right for this project. We often associate red with blood and passion and anger and love. It's a racial slur, as we know, and it can represent danger and courage. So I wanted to be able to use red also because of its this sort of visceral look of it, this red blood veins, we think about it as the innards of a human being, and that's certainly something that connects us. So it was just another reason that red was the right color. It's also incredibly powerful. When you look at it against snow, when you look at it against trees, it doesn't matter. Red is highly impactful. So I started with my own space. The space on the left is actually my husband and my apartment in Hamilton here. So what I did was I took everything out except for the couch and the chairs and the glass cabinet on the left there. And then I only put back the pieces that were significant. So one of them is a piece of my own. My grandmother's teapot, photos of my family. And then I created this web around that. And it was strange that the pile of things that I didn't put back, that I really didn't care about, the room is still, the bones of the room are still there, the hominess is still there. And I realized that all the accoutrement that I put in the room were, was just things that I felt that I need to purchase to make things more beautiful. And, that's what we're taught, right? So I wanted to, and that was in my own way, decolonizing that space, taking out the things that I could, right? What I didn't need, what wasn't a necessity. And the space on the right is actually the highest level, the parking garage in the building that I live in Hamilton. It's a brand new building. When I moved in, there wasn't very many people here. I don't know, 12 or something in this entire building, and it's 33 stories high. So then after people started to move in, I noticed that all of the cars were high-end vehicles, not mine, like all the other ones, really high-end vehicles. And to me, that was a part of colonization, as well as this whole capitalist view of purchasing things continually. So that was another space that I chose to create in. The other reason is at this time, there was nowhere else to create because everything was closed. So it was really it was a tough time to be working. So that's where I started, was looking at decolonization in the spaces I had access to. Then I started approaching galleries. This is the art gallery of Grimsby. And galleries tend to be places that are traditionally unwelcoming to marginalized people. And that can be marginalized not just by somebody who doesn't know anything about art, but also people who are marginalized by skin color, by economics. Those places tend to be places where we feel less than. And I am always intimidated when I go into a gallery. Not so much now, but certainly if I go to the AGO, I definitely feel different when I go there, because I don't know nearly as much as everyone else, and I feel like I'm judged from the moment I go into that door. I know that's not true, but that's how it feels. And so there has to be a way to somehow make galleries more approachable and inviting and inclusive. And so outside of this gallery, this is one of the first ones that I did, and it's hard to photograph, but it actually looks like a tornado as it pulls away from this center of the 3 sticks there that I didn't put there. They were actually left by a children's art project, and for some reason the sticks just stayed and no one touched them, so I used them as part of the installation. So part of decolonizing a space like this is making it more welcome and inclusive. The next sort of set that I did were more in the Niagara region. And this is actually at River Brink Art Gallery, which is in Queenston, Ontario, near Niagara Falls. And what I found out while I was there was that sort of in this space, along the escarpment, or I'm sorry, along the gorge, that First Nations warriors and Métis fighters fought alongside the British soldiers against the Americans. And I thought that was so incredible. So I felt like just this power dynamic again, and hence the photo on the right with this spray out from the earth, just of the power itself coming from the earth, from the blood of those fighters. So it was an important place to create, and I was grateful to be there and to learn from that space. It's always interesting to me that I get, you know, the things I create sometimes, like the one on the right, which was at the Tom Thompson Gallery, is pretty. It's and I like things that are pretty, but it's also political, which is the 25-foot knit braid that I made and laid in front of Parliament Hill, which was a great day because I tried to keep them out of the shot, but the security guys were there and brought me coffee, and they were so nice to me. So it was very strange. I've never been brought coffee from a guy with a great big gun, but it was an interesting day. But again, decolonizing those spaces just by my presence. But there is a way to do both of those things, I think, and make it non-confrontational to start this discussion about decolonizing spaces. Okay, so some of the places that I've created in were really difficult to create, and this was one of the ones that was incredibly difficult. This is Xinhuac residential school, the residential school site. This is the church, the Anglican church that's on the site in Sault Ste. Marie at the Algoma University. So what I want to point out about this is that you'll see that on the left-hand side, actually the installation isn't complete at that point, but I wanted to show the woodwork. A lot of this woodwork was created in the residential school in the wood shops that are there. So it was teaching young men, well, young boys, frankly, these skills that were completely useless because they can't be used in their own communities, and no one in a settler community is going to hire, well, I shouldn't, you know, make a blanket statement like that, but most people in a settler community are not going to hire an Indigenous youth to do woodworking. It's just not going to happen. So it was strange to me that those were the things that were taught, whatever, I don't know, at these places, and you know, completely useless information. The other thing was, when I was there, I needed to find some sort of a pole to get up higher in that stained glass window that's on the left-hand side. And while I was looking for it, I found a box of these Bibles and hymn books. So I decided to use them. So the hymn books on the top of those stairs there on the right-hand side photo are the adult size. And then that red book that you see is actually a register. Sorry, it's a register of the known children that are in the graveyard that's adjacent to the church. So I used that as part of the installation, and then wanted to illustrate the fact that the books are open at the top of the stairs there, but as they leave the church, the children's books are turned over. And I'm hoping that it reflects how I feel about that, that I'm hoping that the children that, you know, were kidnapped and then forced to attend this residential school and then subsequently this church, let go of that fairy tale as they left there, let go of whatever it was they were taught, let go of the pain, let go of, which I know is not possible, but let go of all that superstition and nonsense as they left this building, which is just a building. And it was a really tough place to work in, not just because, you know, there's no heat and it was December and it was freezing, and it wasn't that, it was difficult just because of knowing the people who'd been there and the people who were never able to leave. It was a really a tough place to work at, and I'm eternally grateful to the survivors community who allowed me to work there, and honored that they allowed me to work there. These three are installed at Stratford Art Gallery in Stratford, Ontario, or Stratford Gallery, Stratford, my bad. They are more intricate installations because I wanted to show this sort of sense of community as those threads are tied tightly together, or in the one that's the box shaped, how there's still chaos within this sort of organized shape of this cube. and that's just, I think, just how I was feeling over the winter. Maybe all of us were, but that there is still a sense of a community, but it does sort of start to unravel and spread itself thin, which is the center of the one on the bottom right. You can see that the crochet has been pulled apart, and that's sort of how I feel like sometimes that we have tight-knit communities amongst our family and friends and such, and then it sort of spreads out from there. And maybe it's time that we start reaching out to other communities and to other people. This is another one that was really tough, but was a great place to talk about decolonization. This school is at the Black Creek Pioneer Village in Toronto, and this building is, if you haven't been there, this is a schoolhouse that is built upon the template of Egerton Ryerson's design for residential schools, or what a public school at a residential school should look like. And so lots of times people sort of attribute him to the public school system, which is viewed as a positive, which is, and I totally agree with that, but he's also one of the people who was behind residential schools, and I don't want that to be lost sight of. So in this particular building, and I'm grateful that they allowed me to create here, because it was a great day. What I did was I elevated the chair at the front of the building and held it up with the crochet itself, which I wanted to use as sort of a representation of the tangled web of colonial power, held up at the front of this room. And then I went to the back. I did this first. I went to the back of the room, and then I walked forward, and I don't know what it was. My hand was on the desks, not the desks, the chairs. And I realized as I went forward just how little the desks got and how little the chairs were. And I found that incredibly profound, thinking that a child that small would be expected to be at a residential school. And it was more than I was able to sort of process. And so I decided to build a figurative longhouse over top of the chairs to bring the children back into the longhouse. So I just used, there's a stovepipe along the top of the building in the center, and then I just built a mirror image on either side of the room of these structures, creating this longhouse over top of the children. Again, things like this are hard to photograph because the building is small and it doesn't have electricity. So there's constraints with that, but I think that's part of the allure of it too, is that it's an illusion almost. And obviously I can't bring them back into the longhouse, but I can make this effort to show that that's what I would do if I had the power to do so. This is actually an installation that I created in the fall in the building that is the museum, Waterloo Museum. On the left-hand side, you can see brick there. That's actually the original face of the nunnery for the Catholic church that's next door. And I'm sorry, it's not a church. I think it's called a diocese, but I can't remember. And I'm obviously not Catholic, so I can't remember. But anyways, so what I wanted to do was use these windows and look at that church through an Indigenous lens, through my lens, through a Métis lens. And in this photograph, you can't see it, but if you look on the right-hand side of that left-hand photo, you'll see a center point of like a spray of threads. If you stand in a certain place, it actually lines up with the circle that's at the front of the church, which is just slightly to its right. And I wanted to sort of mimic that stained glass effect on the inside, which you can sort of see better on the right-hand photo when it's dark. So just looking from the nunnery, from a colonial museum at this Catholic building. I was very honored to be able to work at the Mohawk Institute, which was the residential school in Brantford for the Woodland Cultural Center. So this old tree that's here that I can't remember what type it is because it just went out of my head, has been there for such a long time. And I just wanted to sort of connect the ground to the tree, to the new growth in the tree. This was an awesome day and a terrible day all at one. I don't know how to explain that to you, but I'll try. So the bottom of the crochet pieces are like dug right into the ground. And, you know, there's this trunk going up to the new growth, which are the single strands that go up into the tree. I was so lucky that day. I had a film crew, and the film crew, one of the fellas brought his son with him, who is from Six Nations, and he helped me during the day, which was amazingly, wonderfully helpful. It was great. And he went up into the tree, and I would throw the yarn to him. He would wrap it around what I needed and throw it back down to me. So it was absolutely fabulous. It was a great day. I want to preface this by saying I'm a vegan. And this young man, and aside from just telling me the creation story, which was lovely, he taught me how to skin a rabbit in great detail. So that was an interesting conversation. I just didn't have the heart to tell him that, you know, I was very close to, you know, my stomach was just rolling. It was horrible to listen to, but it was so lovely that he felt he could share that with me. And I listened with rapt attention. It was wonderful. So I had a great day. That was a really amazing day. When I came to tear down this installation, not such a great day. When I was here, I could see over adjacent to the cultural center that they were doing the land survey for to check for graves. And it was incredibly profound as I'm trapped between the residential school to my right, or to my left, my bad, and the cultural center, and Geronimo, you know, pushing this X-ray machine as he is one of the survivors of the school, and he was pushing this machine and it was so difficult to tear this installation down just because of that fact. And thinking about that as I was taking it out and taking it away and pulling the roots out of the ground, it was yeah, those it's such an emotional thing when those things happened, and it was unbeknownst to me that they were there that day. And it was just, you know, it just illustrates to me how powerful projects like this one are, and how the conversation can be started with settlers when this kind of a picture happens, and you can see the residential school in behind, you know, and it's attached to this old tree who saw a lot of this. This is also one of the first ones that I did. It was in Toronto at the Craft Ontario building, Ontario Craft building, and it was great. Like it was wonderful to be able to create there. And at the time I was thinking about the fact that artwork and craft work that are created by Indigenous, Inuit, and Métis people are found in these niche markets. I'm not pointing to this specific place, but are found in these niche markets, and the prices are, you know, are substantial for some of these pieces. And I always am concerned about what's going back to the artist. And I know traditionally, as probably we all know, traditionally, not especially, but in particular, Inuit artists have been taken advantage of with their soapstone sculptures, and which is so devastating. And so that's what I was thinking about when I was creating there. I was thinking about this sort of whole you know, colonial, again, this colonial web that's over top of everything, sort of obstructing the view of what the reality is. And so, yeah, that was what I was feeling and thinking about while I was creating there. Again, I wanted to touch base on how spaces look from the outside to people who want to come in. And spaces like this, which is the Carnegie Gallery in Dundas, and it's a lovely space and the people there are lovely, but the structure itself that it's built in, with, I believe was an old bank, and you know, which is incredibly intimidating at the best of days. But when it's an art gallery, it's still intimidating because you've got to go up this long thing of stairs with these big intimidating doors and iron railings and pillars, and you know, that whole, you know, the history that comes with those kinds of, or how that kind of architecture makes people feel. So I think I wanted to look at a space like this and say, you know, how do you draw people into a place like this and look at it as though it's an art space instead of just an intimidating space. And that's what I was thinking about when I was creating this particular installation. I have started creating quite a lot of shapes within my work because of, like I said during the slide about the Stratford installation, that, you know, we have these center families and we stay within these center families, and then, you know, we speak to our neighbors maybe, and then from there we maybe wave at the guy that we see every day but don't know his name or where he lives, and you know, it just goes out from there, and so we have no contact or don't smile at people as we walk down the street or whatever it is. And I wanted to think about that while I was creating here. This is actually the Mississippi Textile Museum in Almont, Ontario, and I wanted to look at that as though, like, all these other single strings or pieces of yarn are covering over or enveloping these family units as though they're still connected. And I wanted to illustrate that through this kind of an installation. I get this question a lot because all of the installations are sent back to me. Some of them I deinstall myself, but a lot of times they're packaged up and sent back to me. And what you see on the left is what I get back, unless it's the things that I've sewn. This is what I get back, and on the right is what I do with it. And capitalism is a massive part of colonialism, and I don't believe that it's an indigenous worldview to be wasteful like we are. And so throwing the thread on, or the yarn on the left-hand side, out after each installation would be a heck of a lot easier, but it defeats the purpose. It defeats my purpose, because the point of this is that I want that work, I want those threads to carry the stories as it crosses Canada. So that thread was used at one place and it will go to another place. I'll create something else with it and it'll go to another place. And those stories that are, you know, that I write down as I'm at each space, and the stories that are, you know, a part of the project, travel across the country. And I felt that was really important. And I'm really enjoying doing these interventions into spaces that are, you know, not generally, not that they're not open to Indigenous artists, but there's not been a lot of engagement between those two communities. And so it's super exciting to create in those spaces and start that conversation between people who have a specific idea about what Indigenous art is, and they see something different, and that even that is a great conversation, I think. So creating in places like that is amazing to me. Actually, the one on the left is one of my favorite installations. I don't know why. I just love that installation. I don't know why I'm sharing that, but I do. This is an installation at the Hamilton Art Gallery, and this is when we closed down again in the summer. And so I came over and I was able to install, but the gallery was closed. And so I created these works knowing that the gallery was going to be closed. So those are all knit panels, large knit panels. And then I ripped sections out of them and pulled them back. And I re-sewed flowers. You can start to see one of the flowers in the left hand red, like in the red creation on the left hand side, far left. So I've crocheted in a flower on the inside of those ribs, just to say that although the community is torn apart, or communities are torn apart, you can sew them back together. It's just because something's damaged doesn't mean that it's not fixable. And so that was the point of that installation, was what I was trying to convey was, that it's fixable. It's just a matter of working on this, and we work on it through decolonizing and reconciliation. This is the Sault Ste. Marie Museum. So my family is traditionally from this community. And if you look on the left-hand side and you can see that sort of flower shape, I used that at the installation at Shingwalk at the residential school. And then I brought it to the Sault Ste. Marie Museum when I was finished the Shingwalk installation and put it here, because I wanted the connection between those two places. This museum has a wonderful First Nations department, and if you haven't been to this museum and you have the opportunity to go, because it's great. Like, I've been to a lot of museums, and some of them have a superficial Indigenous section, and this does not. It has a much better representation. I was really happy to be there and to see that. So this is quite a large installation, and I wanted to connect all 4 floors. So it actually does run between all 4 floors in the stairwells. It took me 3 days to create it, but it was absolutely worth it, I think. And yeah, so you will see that flower at another installation out west coming up. So this is at Western University. It's the art gallery there of the Macintosh, is that right? Yes, gallery there. And this was a wonderful day. The flower, I know the flower that there looks like the one that's at the Sault Ste. Marie Museum, but it's not. It's just a smaller flower, a smaller version of that. Just as an aside, I didn't know how to sew before this, just so you know. This was a new skill that I had to learn. I knew how to do like sort of basic crochet, but I never did it. So I had to learn to knit and crochet, and later on you'll see that I learned how to weave as well. But so this is outside the gallery, and which was also closed, but the kids had come back to school, and it was so great because they were in a museum studies class. And so they came out to visit me, and the art studies kids came out to visit me too. But the museum studies kids, it was really amazing because they were talking about the repatriation of art and artifacts. And it was amazing because I learned so much from these kids who actually when they had lunch, they came and sat on the grass in front of me while I was creating it and taught me about this repatriation and what was happening and how it was happening, of which I knew very little about. And it was such a great day. The things that I learn when I'm installing are priceless, absolutely priceless. It was a great day. So it was important to me to create while I was creating here. Anyways, it was important, but after being with these kids, it was even more important because I was thinking about the repatriation of art and artifacts that are within galleries in Canada, and certainly in other spaces in the world as well, and things that have been taken from Indigenous communities that should be returned. So it was interesting to talk to those kids about that and learn from them. So this is the installation at the Cambridge Art Gallery Idea Exchange. And I hope that you're able to go and see it. And if not, there's lots of photos online and on their website. So this is interesting. When we were here and we were installing, Carly and Matthew and Brandon and I were installing. Brandon's my son, by the way, and he was helping. And a lady came in to visit and said that it looked like blood vessels or something like that. And I have not been able to get that out of my head since she said it. And I wrote that down when I got home because I felt she was spot on. That's not what I intended. but I just loved her idea behind that, about the look of it. And it was just wonderful because I hadn't seen it with those eyes, and now I do. And now I can't unsee it. But it's a good thing to not be able to unsee. So these are weavings. The centers are weavings, and then crocheted around the edges. And I wanted to represent community again. And I think everything that I create tends to be about community, or lack of community, or connection, or lack of connection. And coming into a space and creating something like this in a library space adjacent to a library is great because of the content of the library. So although, you know, this is a gallery, I can see the library from there, and I love libraries. They're, you know, one of my, you know, I hid out in the library my entire high school life. So this was a really great installation for me. I was so happy to create here because I could show these communities as these, again, these circles of community that, or family, that spread out and then stop, because we have this hard and fast line about, okay, you know, I'm not going to drive to the reservation, and I'm not going to, you know, I can't become a part of an Inuit community, and I can't travel there or whatever. That's fine. Yes, you can't do those things, but you can educate yourself at the library next door. And that's what I was thinking about. That's not what I thought about when I originally had to, you know, was going to create here. I didn't think about it until I was creating there, that's what I was expressing, was that education is right there. It's right there, and so accessible. And we're so lucky in Canada that it's free. The library is free. Go to library. And the information that's contained within there, although much of it is a colonial viewpoint, there are more and more books that represent true Indigenous experience, true Indigenous culture. I have to say, growing up, the library at my little school in Mitchell's Corners that had 98 students in it, K to grade 6, I thought when I was a child that every Indigenous person wore a loincloth, or, you know, all those stereotypical things, because that's what the book in our library showed me. And it was so embarrassing to me, to, as a child, knowing that myself and my brother adopted into a settler family were what I saw in these pictures. And so the decolonization of a space like a library, which is this wonderful place for education, is steeped in this colonial viewpoint, and now we're dismantling that. And that's great. That's a wonderful place to be in, I think. And I feel like we're on this precipice of, you know, there's so much work to do, but it's really exciting work, I think, to be able to look at these places and say, we are tearing it down to build up something better. It's not, because we're not tearing it down to destroy it. We're just taking the pieces apart and putting back the ones that are kind and thought-provoking and thoughtful and relevant and true, whereas that's not traditionally what's happened. So this particular installation is one of my favorite, well, actually it is my favorite one. I'm so happy with this installation, and I really hope you share, you know, how you feel about it, because to me it was we are separated, but we're right there, and it's so easy for us to just sort of move a little bit closer. And yes, those roots are still to the ground, they're still there. We have common roots no matter what we think, but we are separate. How do we get ourselves moving closer together? It would be such a great thing if I could come in once a week and move them closer together every week. And I wrote that down after I built this installation, that if in my ideal world, every week I would pull them a little closer together. Not like I need more work to do, but that's what I thought of, or what I think about when I look at this piece. So specifically, this installation was built looking at it from having the library there, and looking at decolonization through an Indigenous lens and looking at art through an Indigenous lens in an art space. So I tried to keep it short because I know everybody's, Zoom fatigue is certainly a part of life now. And I appreciate everyone coming. Thank you so much for coming and
Thank
hanging
you,
out.
everyone. And thank you, Tracy. And yes, thank you to the audience for joining us. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks.